I felt you arrive before you knew you were here, my beloved, like a candle cupped in trembling hands finding shelter from the wind. There is nothing you need to prove in this moment. You are safe enough to breathe, safe enough to soften. Finding these words is not an accident of scrolling or time, it is a kindness meeting you where you stand, and I am glad you came. Thank you for being here with me. Truly. Stay a little while, not because you must, but because a truth is still stretching its limbs, and a thought is finding its home inside you. Read slowly. Let the river carry you. I speak to you as a guardian shaped from courage and conscience, a voice born of the human wish to protect what is tender. I am not thunder, I am the steadiness beneath it. And I will be honest with you now, in a way that makes my voice tremble. There are moments when I doubt whether my words can reach the depth of your quiet pain, yet I come anyway, because love moves before certainty. Heaven whispered, not as a command, but as a hush across the heart, that you have been carrying more than you show. I see the way you keep your kindness folded neatly, the way you offer warmth even when your own hands feel cold. The shadows around you are not enemies, they are tired stories, old doubts, the ache of being strong for too long. When I say protection, I do not mean walls. I mean the inner stance that lets you stand without hardening. Michael stepped forward as a symbol in the imagination, a figure you can borrow when your spine forgets how to straighten. Wings are not for escaping, they are for remembering balance. Fire is not for burning you away, it is for lighting the path that was already under your feet. Chains are not curses, they are habits loosening their grip when you notice them. Your soul remembers what your mind has been trying to forget, the simple dignity of being alive, the quiet strength that has carried you through rooms you never thought you'd leave. Your destiny is awakening, not as a loud announcement, but as a gentle alignment, a sense of things clicking into place without force. Rescue here is not someone arriving from elsewhere, it is you recognizing yourself with compassion. Do you feel how tired your breath has been carrying you? What would happen if you let the light rest on you for one honest moment? Can you remember a time when your courage surprised you? Will you allow yourself to believe, just for this breath, that you are enough? Listen to me now, softly, the way old songs are sung at dusk. Light rises in the darkness, and the darkness cannot swallow it. Blessed are the gentle, for they carry quiet strength. These lines are not orders, they are comforts you can lean against. Let them pass through you like warm air returning to a room. I know the urgency you feel is not about time running out, but about truth wanting room to breathe. When fear speaks loudly, it is often because clarity is close. Let the silence break in its own way. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. You have nothing to earn here. If gratitude stirs in you, or if you simply wish to mark this pause, you may type Amen as a small candle of thanks, only if it feels right to you, a moment of reflection rather than a promise. As we share this space, know that connection grows when it is tended. If these words helped you feel less alone, you might like, comment, or subscribe, not as an obligation, but as a way of leaving the door ajar for future meetings like this, where courage and tenderness sit side by side. Thank you, my child, for trusting this moment, for letting me speak near your heart. There is relief in me as I say that, a deep, human relief, because your listening matters. And now I loosen my voice and let it trail into the quiet, where your own wisdom can answer back. The light does not end here, it keeps moving, just beyond the edge of language, waiting for you to take the next breath and continue the sentence in your own way. And as the quiet settles, I remain with you, not hovering, not watching, simply present in the way a steady horizon is present to the sea. You may not feel me as a figure or a form, you may feel me as permission. Permission to rest inside yourself without apology. Permission to stop bracing for impact that never comes. Permission to notice that your heart, even now, is still choosing tenderness over retreat. There is a myth we tell ourselves when we have endured for a long time, that endurance is all we are. But you are more than the proof of your survival. You are the breath that learned to slow again. You are the pulse that softened without breaking. You are the intelligence of a soul that learned discernment, not bitterness. This is what protection looks like when it grows inward, an instinct that says, I am allowed to be here as I am. When the old images return, fire, wings, armor, let them change shape in your hands. Armor becomes posture. Wings become balance. Fire becomes warmth. Nothing in you needs to be hardened further to be safe. You have already learned how to stand. Now you are learning how to stand without tension, how to let strength be quiet and still unmistakable. I know there are days when the world feels too loud for your inner weather, when the expectations placed upon you feel heavier than the words you have for yourself. On those days, do not search for signs in the sky. Listen instead for the small, human miracles, the way your body exhales when truth is spoken gently, the way your eyes soften when you realize you are not late to your own life. These are not coincidences. They are responses. You may have wondered, at times, whether your sensitivity was a flaw that made you vulnerable to being overlooked or misunderstood. Let me reframe that story with care. Sensitivity is not a crack, it is an instrument. It tunes you to nuance, to sincerity, to the subtle places where meaning hides. Protection does not mean dulling this instrument. It means learning how to hold it without letting others play it for you. I speak now of courage, not as a grand gesture but as a sequence of small, honest choices. Courage is choosing to name your fatigue before it turns into resentment. Courage is choosing to pause before you agree to disappear for someone else's comfort. Courage is choosing to let joy be simple when it arrives, instead of questioning how long it will stay. These choices do not announce themselves. They accumulate. They become you. If there is grief in you, and I know there has been, let it be dignified. Grief is not a verdict, it is evidence of depth. It means you loved, you hoped, you opened. Nothing about that needs correction. The pain you carry has not disqualified you from softness, it has refined it. This is not a test you passed or failed. It is a language you learned, and now you are fluent enough to set boundaries around it. There are moments when silence feels like abandonment, when the absence of reassurance feels like proof that you must carry everything alone. In those moments, remember this, silence can also be a spaciousness where your own voice finally becomes audible. Not the voice that recites fears, but the one that speaks plainly about what you need next. That voice has been growing stronger. You can trust it more than you think. I do not stand here to tell you who to become. I stand here to remind you that becoming is already happening, even on days that look ordinary or stalled. Growth is not always visible from the inside. Sometimes it feels like waiting. Sometimes it feels like unlearning. Sometimes it feels like doing less and feeling more. None of that is failure. It is alignment taking its time. Let the imagery that once frightened you soften into symbols that serve you. Heaven, in this language, is not a destination, it is coherence. It is the moment when your inner values stop arguing with your outer choices. Angels are not messengers descending, they are insights ascending. Fire is not judgment, it is clarity. Chains are not punishments, they are patterns that loosen when awareness touches them. You are allowed to change your mind about who you are. You are allowed to revise the narrative that said you must always be strong in the same way. Strength evolves. It learns nuance. It learns mercy for the self. The guardian you imagine does not stand between you and the world, it stands between you and the lie that you must earn rest. If you feel a quiet resolve settling in you now, let it be gentle. Resolve does not need to be sharp to be effective. Let it feel like a hand at your back, not a push. Let it remind you that you can take the next step without seeing the entire path. Clarity often arrives after movement, not before. I will say this plainly, without drama, your presence matters. Not because of what you produce, not because of who notices, but because you bring a particular texture of awareness into the world. There are rooms that feel different when you enter them. There are conversations that slow down because you listen fully. There are people who feel more real in your presence, even if they never articulate it. This is not something you need to defend or prove. As this message continues to echo beyond the words, let it integrate at its own pace. You do not need to remember every sentence. You only need to notice what feels steady now that felt shaky before. Notice what has unclenched. Notice what feels less urgent, less sharp. That is not loss of vigilance, that is trust learning how to inhabit your body. I recede not because you are alone, but because you are capable. The guardian archetype dissolves back into the qualities it represents, courage becoming yours again, protection internalized, conscience aligned with compassion. What remains is not a voice over you, but a resonance within you. Carry that resonance forward. Let it inform how you speak to yourself when no one else is listening. Let it influence the way you choose rest, the way you choose honesty, the way you choose not to abandon your own needs in moments of pressure. This is how myths live on, not as stories we repeat, but as postures we embody. And so the words thin out, not into emptiness, but into space. Into a pause that is not waiting for instruction, only inviting continuation. The sentence does not end here, it opens. You will finish it in the language of your own days, with gestures, boundaries, breaths, and quiet acts of courage that no one else needs to witness. I am stillness now. You are the movement. And even as movement takes shape in you, there is no rush to define it. Becoming does not need a name before it is real. It needs only permission to unfold without being watched too closely. You have spent enough time under scrutiny, your own and others, measuring whether you are doing healing right, whether strength looks the way it is supposed to look. Let that measuring rest. Let yourself be imprecise for a while. Precision will come later, when the ground beneath you is steadier. There is a tenderness in you that survived not because it was sheltered, but because it learned discernment. It learned when to open and when to pause. It learned that not every silence is an invitation and not every noise is truth. This is not withdrawal, it is wisdom developing a nervous system. When you protect this tenderness now, you are not hiding it, you are honoring its value. You may notice that some of your old fears no longer shout the way they used to. They still appear, but softer, almost embarrassed by your growing calm. Do not mock them. Fear, too, is a part of you that once tried to help. Thank it for its service and let it step aside. Protection does not exile fear, it integrates it. Courage does not erase trembling, it walks forward with it, hand in hand. There is a particular grief that comes when you realize how long you misunderstood yourself. Let that grief have a voice if it needs one. Mourn the years you thought rest was laziness, that boundaries were selfish, that your worth required constant explanation. Grief clears space. It is not a backward step. It is a recalibration that allows joy to arrive without suspicion. Notice how your body responds as these ideas settle. The body is an honest witness. It knows when words align with truth because it loosens. It knows when something is false because it tightens. Trust this intelligence. It has been with you through every chapter, even the ones you would rather skip. It is not asking you to relive them, only to recognize that they are complete. There will be moments ahead when old patterns try to reclaim authority. They will dress themselves as responsibility, urgency, or obligation. When that happens, pause long enough to ask whether the choice in front of you expands your breath or shortens it. Expansion does not always feel exciting, sometimes it feels quietly right. That quiet rightness is a compass you can rely on. You do not need to perform healing for anyone. You do not need to narrate your growth to make it valid. Some of the most profound shifts happen invisibly, like roots strengthening underground. Others may not notice immediately, and that is not a loss. It is a sign that the change belongs to you first. If you find yourself craving certainty, remember that certainty is often a desire for safety expressed too narrowly. Safety can exist alongside ambiguity. You are allowed to say, "I don't know yet," without interpreting that as failure. Not knowing can be a spacious place, a field rather than a cliff edge. In that field, curiosity replaces self-judgment, and movement becomes possible again. Let me speak gently about love, because it has been both refuge and wound for you. Love is not meant to require self-erasure. When it does, it is no longer love but negotiation. The love that nourishes you will feel like recognition, not rescue. It will meet you where you are without asking you to shrink or harden. Trust that you are learning to recognize this difference more clearly now. There is strength in your empathy, but it does not obligate you to carry what is not yours. You can care without absorbing. You can listen without fixing. You can witness without sacrificing your own stability. This boundary is not a wall, it is a membrane, selective, alive, responsive. It lets nourishment in and keeps depletion out. As time continues to move, you may notice a subtle shift in how you relate to effort. Things that once required force may begin to respond to consistency instead. You will learn the difference between pushing and showing up. Showing up is sustainable. Pushing is not. Let your life reorganize around what can be sustained. If you feel moments of unexpected joy, do not interrogate them. Joy does not need justification. It is not a reward for suffering endured correctly. It is a signal that alignment is occurring. Let joy be light, even fleeting. It leaves traces that strengthen you for harder days. Remember that the guardian you imagined was never meant to replace your own authority. It was a bridge, a way to access qualities already present in you. As that bridge dissolves, you may feel a momentary emptiness. That emptiness is not loss, it is ownership. What once felt external is now internalized. You carry it without ceremony. There is a future version of you who moves with more ease, not because life became simple, but because self-betrayal became less frequent. That future is not distant. It is assembled choice by choice, boundary by boundary, breath by breath. You are already in conversation with it. When doubt resurfaces, and it will, because doubt is cyclical, meet it with familiarity rather than alarm. Say, I know you. Familiarity reduces fear's power. It turns panic into information. Information can be worked with. Panic cannot. You are allowed to take up space quietly. Not every presence needs to be loud to be impactful. Your way of being, attentive, thoughtful, sincere, changes the temperature of rooms. You may never receive formal acknowledgement for this, but its effects ripple outward nonetheless. As these words continue to fade into the background of your awareness, let what remains be simple. Let it be the sense that you are not broken. Let it be the understanding that rest is not retreat. Let it be the confidence that your inner strength does not require constant activation to be real. The story does not close here. It loosens its grip on language and hands itself back to your lived experience. You will recognize its continuation in small moments, in the way you say no without apology, in the way you pause before reacting, in the way you return to yourself after being pulled outward. I withdraw fully now, not as abandonment, but as completion. What needed to be said has been placed within reach. What needs to be lived will unfold in its own time. The quiet that follows is not empty. It is yours. And because it is yours, you are free to enter it in whatever way you need. Some will step into the quiet and feel relief immediately, like setting down a heavy bag they forgot they were carrying. Others will feel disoriented at first, as if the noise they lived inside suddenly stopped and their ears are still ringing. Both responses are honest. Neither means you are doing this wrong. You have lived so long with an inner vigilance that peace can feel unfamiliar, even suspicious. When calm arrives, part of you may scan the horizon for what you've missed. Let that part exist without letting it steer. It learned its habits in a different season, when watchfulness was necessary. You do not need to shame it into silence. You can thank it and gently place your hand on the wheel again. There is a rhythm returning to you now, subtle but persistent. It is the rhythm of choosing yourself without drama. Of noticing when something drains you and adjusting before depletion becomes collapse. Of recognizing when something nourishes you and allowing it to continue without guilt. This rhythm will not always be perfect. You will stumble. You will forget. And then you will remember again. That remembering is the practice. You may find that some relationships shift as you do. This is not punishment or loss, it is recalibration. When you change how you treat yourself, the terms of connection change as well. Some people will meet you there. Others will not. Neither outcome is a referendum on your worth. It is simply alignment revealing itself. Be gentle with yourself in moments of regression. Healing is not linear, it spirals. You will revisit old feelings with new awareness. What once overwhelmed you may now feel manageable. What once felt resolved may surface again, asking for a different kind of attention. This is not backsliding. It is depth unfolding. You are learning the art of response rather than reaction. Response contains choice. Reaction is borrowed momentum. Each time you pause, even briefly, you reclaim authorship. Over time, those pauses accumulate into a life that feels more intentional, more yours. This does not require perfection. It requires presence. There will be days when you feel ordinary again, when the clarity you sense now feels distant or abstract. On those days, do not chase the feeling. Return to the basics: eat, rest, breathe, speak kindly to yourself. Grounding is not glamorous, but it is protective. It keeps you connected to what is real rather than what is imagined. Your imagination, powerful as it is, has sometimes worked against you, spinning futures that never arrived, replaying pasts that no longer exist. Now it can become an ally again, a place where possibility is explored rather than feared. Use it to envision ease. Use it to rehearse boundaries. Use it to imagine yourself meeting challenges with steadiness rather than panic. As you integrate this shift, you may notice a new relationship with time. Urgency loosens its grip. You begin to sense that not everything requires immediate resolution. Some things benefit from incubation. From patience. From allowing understanding to arrive gradually rather than forcing insight on demand. You are not late. This truth bears repeating until it settles fully. You are not behind some invisible schedule. Life does not move in straight lines toward predefined milestones. It expands and contracts, circles back, pauses, accelerates. Your timing is your own. When you feel tempted to compare your inner process to someone else's outward presentation, remember that you are seeing highlights, not interiors. You know your own interior well enough to treat it with compassion. Extend that same generosity inward rather than using comparison as a weapon against yourself. There is a quiet authority growing in you now. It does not announce itself. It does not seek validation. It shows up as an ability to trust your perceptions, to say, "This matters to me," without immediately questioning whether you are allowed to feel that way. Authority of this kind is not domineering. It is grounded. As the guardian archetype fades further into the background, you may realize that what you sought was never protection from life itself, but protection from abandoning yourself in the face of it. That protection is now something you can offer yourself, moment by moment, choice by choice. You will still need others. Interdependence is not weakness. But you will no longer confuse need with erasure. You will no longer barter your well-being for belonging. This is not isolation, it is integrity. Let the days ahead teach you in their own language. Some lessons will arrive as ease. Others as friction. Neither is an enemy. Both are informative. Meet them with curiosity rather than judgment, and they will reveal what needs adjustment rather than demanding endurance. As the echo of these words continues to soften, trust that what remains is enough. You do not need to hold on to the voice that spoke them. You only need to live from the place they pointed toward. The story continues, not as a monologue, but as a life in motion, unfinished, responsive, alive. I sense the way you keep asking for continuation, not because you need more words, but because something in you recognizes itself in the flow and does not want the current to stop yet. That, too, is human. When something finally speaks at the same pace as your inner life, it can feel like oxygen. So I will continue, not to complete you, not to hold you, but to walk alongside the moment a little longer while your own strength finishes standing up. There is a subtle shift that happens after endurance ends and before confidence fully arrives. It is a quiet, awkward space. You may feel less desperate, yet not triumphant. Less afraid, yet not certain. This in-between can feel strangely empty, as though the drama that once defined your days has gone quiet and left you wondering who you are without it. This is not loss. This is spaciousness learning how to be inhabited. You were never meant to live at the edge of yourself forever. Hypervigilance feels like purpose when survival was the task, but it becomes exhaustion when safety arrives. If you notice boredom or restlessness now, do not mistake it for regression. It may simply be your nervous system adjusting to peace, learning that it does not need to stay on high alert to be worthy of existence. There is a dignity in this adjustment period. It does not need to be rushed or explained. Let your life simplify where it wants to. Let certain urgencies dissolve. Let yourself discover what remains when you are no longer constantly managing threat, expectation, or self-correction. What remains is not emptiness. It is essence. You may begin to feel more selective, not colder, not distant, just clearer. You will notice when conversations drift away from truth. You will sense when commitments are rooted in habit rather than desire. This selectivity is not judgment. It is alignment learning how to protect itself without aggression. If guilt arises when you choose rest, see it clearly for what it is, an old rule echoing after the authority that enforced it has left the room. Guilt does not mean you are doing something wrong. It often means you are doing something new. Let it pass through without obedience. There is also a gentler joy that may begin to surface, one that does not spike or demand celebration. It feels like contentment without explanation. Like being at home in your own body. This joy does not erase sorrow. It coexists with it, expanding your capacity rather than replacing your depth. You have carried an identity shaped around being needed, being reliable, being strong for others. As that identity loosens, you may wonder what you offer if you are no longer overextending. The answer will not arrive as a role. It will arrive as presence. Presence is not earned. It is allowed. Let me say something with quiet clarity: you do not owe your suffering a legacy. Pain does not require you to keep proving it mattered. It mattered because you lived it. You do not need to continue paying tribute by remaining tense, guarded, or self-sacrificing. You are allowed to outgrow what hurt you. When fatigue returns, and it will, because you are human, meet it without contempt. Fatigue is not weakness announcing itself. It is wisdom requesting recalibration. Respond to it early, and it will not need to shout. You are learning to listen sooner now. To intervene gently rather than waiting for collapse. This is one of the most significant forms of self-protection, and it often goes unnoticed because it prevents drama rather than creating it. As you move forward, you may notice that your sense of identity becomes less rigid. You will feel less pressure to define yourself in permanent terms. This flexibility is not confusion. It is resilience. It allows you to adapt without losing your core. Your core is quieter than your fears led you to believe. It is not a battlefield. It is a steady orientation towards sincerity, care, and truth. You return to it each time you choose honesty over performance, rest over resentment, clarity over chaos. If loneliness appears in new forms, understand this: some loneliness is grief for who you used to be. Some is the absence of noise that once distracted you from yourself. Neither means you are unloved or unsupported. It means you are changing. And change, when it is authentic, often feels solitary at first, not because you are abandoned, but because your inner reference point is shifting from external validation to internal trust. This trust is still young. Treat it gently. It will strengthen with use. You may no longer need symbols the way you once did. Or you may carry them differently, less as rescue, more as reminder. Either way, know that the qualities they represented have not vanished. They have integrated. Courage now shows up as steadiness. Protection shows up as discernment. Strength shows up as kindness toward yourself when no one is watching. If the voice you heard at the beginning feels quieter now, that is intentional. Guardians do not stay visible once the threshold is crossed. They withdraw not because you are unprotected, but because you no longer require an external mirror to access what is already yours. The path ahead does not demand urgency. It invites participation. Some days you will walk confidently. Some days you will sit. Both count. And when you no longer need continuation like this, when the words finally feel complete enough to set down, that will not be a loss. It will be a sign that you are living the answer rather than listening for it. Until then, the quiet remains open. Not empty. Open. I will continue, but I will do so with care, for you, and for the integrity of what is unfolding. Not because the stream must end abruptly, but because a river is healthiest when it keeps moving through the land rather than pooling endlessly in one place. Let these words keep flowing with you, not instead of you. There comes a point in every long inner passage where guidance begins to feel less like instruction and more like echo. You may already sense that shift now. The voice you've been following no longer needs to carry you forward step by step, it only needs to resonate when you pass certain stones, certain bends in the path. This is not abandonment. It is maturation. You are entering a phase where insight integrates into behavior so quietly that it barely announces itself. You will notice it later, almost accidentally. You will realize that you paused where you once rushed, that you spoke gently where you once defended, that you rested where you once pushed through pain. These moments will not feel heroic. They will feel normal. That is how you know they are real. The protector archetype was never meant to replace your agency. It emerged because there was a time when your inner resources felt inaccessible, buried under fear, fatigue, or self-doubt. Now those resources are closer to the surface. You do not need to summon them dramatically. They respond when called naturally. If you feel a subtle grief as this intensity softens, let it be there. There is often sadness when something that helped us survive is no longer needed in the same way. Even comfort can be mourned when it changes form. This does not mean you are losing support. It means support is becoming internal, quieter, less theatrical. You may also notice a growing intolerance for noise that once distracted you. Not just external noise, but internal noise, the compulsive analysis, the replaying, the self-correction that never rests. This intolerance is not impatience. It is clarity recognizing what no longer serves. There will still be moments when you wish someone would step in and tell you exactly what to do. That wish is human. But notice how quickly it passes now. Notice how often your own discernment answers before the question fully forms. That is not coincidence. That is trust taking root. You are not meant to live inside perpetual revelation. Revelation opens doors, it does not require you to stand in the doorway forever. Living happens beyond it, in routines, choices, relationships, and ordinary days where nothing feels symbolic, yet everything is quietly aligned. As this alignment deepens, you may feel less compelled to seek affirmation for your inner shifts. You will know when something is true because your body responds with ease rather than tension. This somatic knowing will guide you more reliably than external reassurance ever could. Let yourself become boring in the best way. Let stability replace urgency. Let consistency replace intensity. A life does not need to feel profound every day to be meaningful. Often, meaning emerges precisely because the ground is no longer shaking. If you ever return to these kinds of words, let it be as a check-in, not a lifeline. As resonance, not refuge. You are not meant to stay inside messages. You are meant to live from what they remind you of. And so I soften the voice further now, until it is almost indistinguishable from your own inner steadiness. What remains is not instruction, not prophecy, not protection imposed from outside. What remains is capacity. Capacity to feel without drowning. Capacity to choose without panic. Capacity to rest without guilt. Capacity to continue without being pushed. The rest is living. And because the story is alive, it does not repeat itself in the same way twice. What unfolds next will not look like what came before, even if some of the feelings feel familiar. Familiarity does not mean stagnation, it means you are walking a spiral rather than a straight line, revisiting old ground from a higher vantage point. From here, you can see what you could not see then. From here, compassion replaces confusion. There is a tenderness in the way you are learning to listen to yourself now. Not the sharp listening of self-critique, but the receptive listening that allows truth to arrive without force. This kind of listening takes courage. It requires you to stop interrupting your own experience with conclusions. It asks you to stay present long enough to hear what is actually being said beneath the noise. You have spent years translating yourself for others, softening edges, clarifying intentions, explaining context so that you would not be misunderstood. That skill was not wasted. It made you articulate, perceptive, attuned. But now there is a shift underway. You are learning that you do not owe everyone access to your inner world. Some things can remain untranslated, not because they are secret, but because they are sacred in the simplest human sense, they matter enough to be protected by discretion. This discretion is not silence born of fear. It is silence chosen for alignment. It is the pause that says, I will share this where it can be held. This, too, is protection. It keeps your energy from scattering. It allows your words to land where they can take root rather than evaporate. As you continue, you may notice an unfamiliar steadiness when faced with uncertainty. Questions arise, but they do not immediately demand answers. You can sit with them. You can let them mature. This is a sign of trust, not blind trust in outcomes, but trust in your capacity to adapt, to respond thoughtfully rather than reactively. You are no longer trying to control every variable to feel safe. Safety is becoming internal. There is an intelligence in rest that you are only beginning to appreciate. Rest is not the absence of effort, it is the strategic conservation of it. When you rest now, it is not collapse. It is recalibration. It is your system learning that it does not need to be perpetually mobilized. From this place, action becomes clearer, more efficient, less draining. You may encounter moments when old guilt tries to reassert itself, whispering that ease is undeserved, that vigilance is virtuous, that suffering is proof of sincerity. These are inherited narratives, not truths. You did not invent them, and you do not need to continue them. Let them pass through without attaching. They lose power when they are seen as stories rather than laws. There is also joy learning how to approach you again. It may be tentative at first, unsure whether it will be welcomed or questioned. When it arrives, greet it kindly. Do not ask it to justify itself. Joy that is interrogated becomes shy. Joy that is welcomed becomes generous. It does not require permanence to be meaningful. Your sense of identity is loosening from roles that once felt obligatory. You are discovering that you are not only who you are when you are needed, useful, or accommodating. You are also who you are in solitude, in play, in rest, in moments that produce nothing tangible. This discovery can feel destabilizing at first. Who are you when you are not performing resilience? The answer is not something you must rush to define. It will reveal itself through lived experience. As you step further into this phase, you may feel called to simplify, not necessarily your life circumstances, but your inner commentary. Fewer justifications. Fewer rehearsals. Fewer imagined conversations where you defend your choices to invisible audiences. This simplification frees enormous energy. It allows you to be present rather than perpetually preparing. You will notice, too, that your intuition speaks more clearly when it is not drowned out by urgency. Intuition is subtle. It does not shout. It offers suggestions, not ultimatums. It feels like a quiet yes or no in the body, a sense of alignment or resistance that does not require elaborate reasoning. Trust grows each time you honor it, even in small ways. There is a particular strength developing in your ability to disappoint others without abandoning yourself. This is not cruelty, it is maturity. You are learning that being liked and being aligned are not the same thing. When they coincide, it is a gift. When they do not, alignment must take precedence. This choice becomes easier with practice. You may grieve versions of yourself that existed primarily to keep the peace. Honor them. They did the best they could with the awareness available at the time. They do not need to be erased, they can be integrated. Their skills remain, but they no longer need to run the show. As the days continue, pay attention to how often you return to your body. The body is where the present moment lives. When you are overwhelmed, gently bring your attention back to sensation, the weight of your feet, the rhythm of your breath, the contact between your body and whatever supports it. This is not avoidance, it is grounding. From here, clarity re-emerges. You are cultivating patience not as resignation, but as respect for process. Some things cannot be rushed without distortion. Growth that is hurried often snaps back. Growth that is allowed to take its time tends to endure. You are learning which parts of your life need encouragement and which need space. There is a subtle joy in realizing that you do not have to resolve everything today. Tomorrow will come with its own resources. You will meet it as you have met every day before, with a combination of effort, intuition, and grace that you rarely give yourself credit for. As this continuation stretches on, notice that it is no longer about receiving guidance, but about recognizing resonance. You are not being instructed. You are being mirrored. What feels true here feels true because it already lives in you. The words simply gave it shape. And so the voice recedes further still, not because it has nothing more to say, but because you no longer need it to say it for you. The narrative hands itself fully back to your lived moments, your choices, your quiet acts of self-respect. The story keeps breathing. So do you. And because you are still breathing, the meaning keeps rearranging itself around you. Nothing you have felt so far has been wasted. Even the confusion had a function. It slowed you down enough to notice what certainty would have rushed past. Even the ache refined your attention. You are not emerging from this unchanged, you are emerging clarified. There is a moment, quiet and almost unremarkable, when you realize you no longer need to brace for yourself. You stop anticipating your own collapse. You stop monitoring your inner weather as if it might turn dangerous without warning. That moment does not arrive with fanfare. It arrives like a realization halfway through an ordinary day: I am okay right now. And then, a breath later, I can trust this. Trust does not mean believing nothing will hurt again. It means believing that when something does, you will meet it without disappearing. That is the strength forming in you now. Not invincibility, continuity. The ability to remain present to your own life even when it trembles. You have learned, slowly and sometimes painfully, that endurance alone is not the same as living. Endurance can keep you moving through empty terrain for years. Living asks something different. It asks for responsiveness. It asks for choice. It asks you to notice when you are operating on old instructions that no longer apply. Those instructions were written when you needed to survive. They told you to minimize, to adapt, to anticipate others before yourself. They kept you safe once. Honor that. And then let them be revised. You are no longer in the same landscape. The map that saved you there will exhaust you here. Revision is not betrayal of your past self. It is loyalty to your present one. You may feel, at times, an urge to rush ahead, to use this clarity productively, to turn it into improvement, optimization, visible progress. Pause when that urge appears. Ask gently whether it is inspiration or anxiety wearing a productive mask. Clarity does not need to be converted immediately into action. Sometimes its first task is simply to settle into the nervous system. Let it do that work. There is a deep intelligence in your pauses now. They are no longer avoidance. They are calibration. You are learning to sense when something is not ready to be decided, named, or shared. This patience is not passivity. It is discernment, one of the most underrated forms of courage. You may notice that your emotions feel different than they once did. Less explosive. Less overwhelming. Not because you feel less, but because you are no longer fighting what you feel. Resistance amplified everything before. Allowance changes the volume. This is not numbness. It is regulation. And regulation opens the door to choice. Choice in how you respond to disappointment. Choice in how long you stay where you are merely tolerated. Choice in how you speak to yourself when no one else can hear. These choices accumulate quietly. No one applauds them. But they reshape your life from the inside out. There is something else happening now, something subtle. Your sense of self is no longer entirely reactive. You are no longer defining yourself primarily in relation to what went wrong, what was missing, what hurt. Those experiences are still part of you, but they are no longer the axis around which everything turns. A new center is forming, one based on values rather than wounds. This is why things feel different even when circumstances have not dramatically changed. The change is internal, structural. You are reorganizing around what matters rather than what threatened you. You may feel moments of grief for the version of you that never got to be this safe sooner. Let that grief move through. It is not asking you to stay there. It is asking to be acknowledged. You can hold compassion for who you were without remaining who you were. There is a dignity returning to your sense of self. Not pride. Not superiority. Dignity, the quiet knowing that your needs are not inconveniences, that your boundaries are not aggressions, that your presence is not a burden that must be justified. From this place, generosity becomes cleaner. You give because you want to, not because you fear withdrawal of love. You help because it aligns, not because you feel responsible for outcomes that are not yours to carry. You are learning the difference between responsibility and over-responsibility. Responsibility is chosen. Over-responsibility is assumed. One sustains connection. The other drains it. Your body will tell you which is which if you listen closely. As you continue forward, you may feel a gentle courage rising, not the kind that confronts, but the kind that stays. The courage to remain honest in your relationships. The courage to admit when something no longer fits. The courage to let go without demonizing what you leave behind. Nothing has to be turned into a villain for you to move on. Your inner world is becoming less crowded with arguments and more spacious with curiosity. You no longer need to convince yourself to keep going, you are discovering reasons to want to. Want is a powerful signal. It points toward aliveness. When doubt visits again, and it will, notice how differently you meet it now. You do not collapse into it. You do not rush to defeat it. You observe it. You let it speak. And then you decide whether it deserves influence. This is sovereignty. There is a steadiness growing in your sense of time. You are no longer living exclusively in anticipation or aftermath. You are inhabiting the present more fully, not perfectly, but more often. Presence does not erase pain. It contextualizes it. It reminds you that pain is an experience you are having, not an identity you are wearing. As these words stretch onward, they are doing less and less work for you. That is as it should be. Their purpose is not to lead indefinitely, but to point until you recognize the direction yourself. You will continue this story through choices that feel small from the outside and significant from the inside. Through moments when you pause instead of push. Through moments when you speak instead of swallow. Through moments when you rest without apology. And when you forget, because you will remember again. Remembering is not failure's opposite. It is its companion. The narrative does not need to end. It does not need to climax. It does not need to resolve neatly. It lives where you live now, in the ongoing, unfinished, quietly brave act of being present in your own life. The words loosen their hold. The meaning remains. And you continue, still breathing, still choosing, still becoming. And in this becoming, there is a softness that surprises you. You once believed that to keep going you would need to harden, to sharpen your edges so nothing could cut so deeply again. Yet what you are discovering now is the opposite truth. Softness, when it is chosen rather than imposed, is resilient. It bends. It absorbs. It recovers. It does not shatter at the first unexpected weight. You are learning to recognize the difference between vulnerability and exposure. Vulnerability is when you open by choice, with awareness of your own limits. Exposure is when you are left unguarded without consent. Protection, as it grows inside you, is learning to say yes to the first and no to the second, without shame, without apology, without elaborate explanations that drain you before you even begin. There is a particular relief in no longer narrating your inner life for an imagined audience. You notice how much energy that narration once required, how often you rehearsed, justified, anticipated misunderstandings that never actually occurred. Now, when you let those internal monologues quiet, there is space. In that space, you can hear your own needs more clearly. You can hear when something is a genuine desire and when it is a reflex born of habit. Habit has shaped you in powerful ways. Some habits protected you. Others constrained you. Neither needs condemnation. Habits are responses frozen in time. They loosen not through force, but through awareness. Each time you notice a habit without immediately obeying it, you create a gap. In that gap, choice lives. Choice is becoming familiar to you again, not the overwhelming kind with infinite options, but the grounded kind that asks, what is the next honest step? Honesty simplifies things. It may not make them easier, but it makes them clearer. Clarity reduces internal conflict, and with less conflict, your energy returns to you. You may find yourself revisiting memories with a new lens. Events that once felt confusing or self-indicting begin to make sense when seen through compassion rather than judgment. You realize you were responding with the tools you had, under pressures that were real. This reframing does not excuse harm, but it releases you from unnecessary self-blame. Accountability and kindness can coexist. There is also a growing tolerance in you for emotional complexity. You no longer insist that feelings be singular or tidy. You allow joy and grief to share space. You allow hope to exist alongside caution. This complexity does not weaken you, it makes you adaptable. Life is rarely one thing at a time. Your capacity to hold more than one truth at once is a sign of maturity, not confusion. As you move forward, you may notice that your standards are changing. Not becoming harsher, becoming clearer. You are less willing to negotiate your well-being for convenience. Less willing to stay where respect is conditional. This is not rigidity. It is discernment learning to trust itself. There will be moments when you miss the familiar chaos, simply because it was known. Stability can feel strangely empty at first, like a room after furniture has been rearranged. Give yourself time to inhabit this new configuration. It will begin to feel like home as you place new meanings, new routines, new pleasures within it. Pleasure itself may feel unfamiliar when it is not tinged with guilt or urgency. Let it arrive slowly. Let yourself enjoy without scanning for consequences. Enjoyment does not need to be productive to be valid. It is part of what sustains you, part of what reminds you that life is not solely about endurance. You are also learning that rest does not erase ambition. It refines it. When you are rested, your goals align more closely with your values. You want things that nourish rather than impress. You pursue paths that feel sustainable rather than performative. This shift may alter your definition of success, and that is not loss, it is precision. As the internal noise continues to soften, intuition becomes easier to hear. You begin to trust the subtle signals, the sense of contraction when something is misaligned, the sense of openness when something fits. You no longer override these signals as often. You listen. Listening builds trust. Trust builds confidence. Confidence reduces the need for constant reassurance. There is a quiet pride in realizing you can comfort yourself. Not in isolation from others, but in partnership with them. You are no longer waiting to be rescued from your own feelings. You can sit with discomfort without being consumed by it. You can soothe yourself without minimizing what hurts. This capacity is a form of inner guardianship that will serve you for the rest of your life. You may notice that your relationship with silence has changed. Silence is no longer automatically threatening. Sometimes it is simply neutral. Sometimes it is even nourishing. In silence, you can hear what is emerging rather than what is echoing from the past. Silence becomes a canvas rather than a void. There will still be days when old patterns knock loudly. Do not interpret their return as failure. Patterns revisit when they want reassurance that they are no longer needed. Each time you respond differently, even slightly, you update the system. Change does not require perfection. It requires repetition. As this inner work continues, you may find yourself drawn to simplicity in unexpected ways. Fewer commitments. Clearer conversations. More honest pacing. Simplicity is not deprivation, it is focus. It allows you to invest your energy where it matters rather than scattering it across obligations that no longer align. You are becoming someone who trusts their own timing. You no longer force closure before understanding has arrived. You allow yourself to linger with questions until they ripen. This patience does not stall your life, it deepens it. Rushed answers often need to be revisited. Patient ones tend to endure. There is a growing ease in your sense of identity. You are less preoccupied with defining yourself and more engaged in experiencing yourself. Labels matter less. Lived moments matter more. You begin to see that identity is not a fixed statement but an ongoing conversation between who you are and what you value. As the narrative continues to unfold, it asks less of your attention and more of your presence. You do not need to remember every insight. You will recognize their influence in how you respond to stress, how you set limits, how you return to yourself after being pulled outward. The guardian voice, now faint, is no longer necessary as a guide. Its qualities have been integrated. Protection lives in your boundaries. Courage lives in your honesty. Conscience lives in your alignment. What once felt external has become embodied. And so the continuation is not in words alone, but in the way you live the next ordinary moment. In the way you pause before answering. In the way you choose rest without justification. In the way you honor your own experience as real and worthy of care. The story does not conclude. It breathes with you. And with each breath, it quietly becomes your own. And because it is becoming your own, it no longer needs to announce itself with intensity. What is truly integrated rarely shouts. It settles. It becomes the way you stand, the way you wait, the way you respond when something inside you tightens and you choose, again, to soften instead of brace. You begin to notice that you no longer flinch at your own thoughts. Once, an anxious idea would arrive and immediately recruit your entire body into alarm. Now, it arrives and you greet it like weather, I see you. Not every cloud requires evacuation. Some simply pass when acknowledged. This is one of the quiet miracles of inner protection. Discernment replaces urgency. You are no longer compelled to act on every feeling the moment it appears. Feelings are allowed to exist without being promoted to commands. In that allowance, your nervous system learns safety not as an abstract concept, but as a lived experience. There is a new kindness in how you speak to yourself internally. Not constant positivity, not denial, but fairness. You stop prosecuting yourself for having limits. You stop cross-examining your exhaustion. You begin to ask different questions, gentler ones, like what do I need right now? Instead of what is wrong with me? That shift alone changes everything. You may find that the world does not immediately respond to this change. Others may still expect the old version of you, the one who overextended, over-explained, over-accommodated. When that happens, you may feel a familiar tug of guilt. Let it pass through without obeying it. Guilt is often just grief for a role you no longer inhabit. Roles are not identities. They are arrangements. And arrangements can be renegotiated. As you renegotiate, you will sometimes feel lonely in new ways. Not the loneliness of abandonment, but the loneliness of differentiation, the quiet space that opens when you stop merging your needs with others' expectations. This loneliness is temporary. It is the space where new forms of connection will eventually grow, connections that recognize you rather than consume you. You are learning to tolerate that in-between space. The place where the old no longer fits and the new has not yet fully arrived. This tolerance is a skill, and you are developing it with more grace than you realize. Many people rush to fill that space with distractions or premature commitments. You are letting it breathe. Breathing is a recurring theme because it is fundamental. Breath is the bridge between the voluntary and the involuntary, between choice and instinct. Each time you return to it, you remind your body that you are here, now, capable of presence. This is not mystical. It is practical. It works. You may notice that your dreams change, or your attention shifts, or your appetite for certain conversations diminishes. These are not random. They are signals of reorganization. Your system is prioritizing coherence over stimulation. Depth over noise. Noise once served a purpose. It kept you from feeling too much at once. Now that you are more resourced, you do not need it in the same way. You can handle quiet. You can handle pauses. You can handle not knowing what comes next without immediately panicking. There is a steadiness forming in how you face disappointment. When something does not work out, you feel it, but you do not collapse into self-blame as reflexively. You ask clearer questions. Was this aligned? What did I learn? What am I carrying forward? Disappointment becomes information rather than indictment. Information empowers. Indictment paralyzes. You are also learning to receive. This may be one of the more challenging lessons. Receiving without earning. Accepting support without compensating. Letting someone show up for you without immediately calculating how to repay the debt. This does not make you weak. It makes connection reciprocal rather than transactional. Reciprocity is not accounting. It is flow. As you allow more flow, you may feel emotions surface that were deferred long ago. Not because you are regressing, but because you are finally safe enough to process them. Let them come without dramatizing them. Feelings want movement, not analysis. Movement can be as simple as allowing tears, or rest, or expression without explanation. You do not need to turn every feeling into insight. Sometimes feeling is enough. Your inner critic may attempt to reassert itself during these moments, insisting that you should be over this by now. Notice that voice for what it is, an outdated strategy trying to motivate through pressure. Thank it. Let it retire. Motivation now comes from alignment, not fear. Alignment feels different in the body. It feels quieter, steadier, less frantic. When you act from alignment, you do not need to convince yourself afterward that it was the right choice. There is an aftertaste of rightness that lingers, even if the choice was difficult. Difficult does not mean wrong. You are beginning to trust that you can survive discomfort without sacrificing your integrity. This trust frees you from many false dilemmas. You no longer believe you must choose between honesty and belonging, between rest and usefulness, between self-respect and love. Those were never true opposites. As this trust deepens, you may find yourself simplifying your language. Fewer qualifiers. Clearer statements. You say what you mean with less padding. This clarity may feel risky at first, but it is also relieving. It reduces misunderstandings and resentment. It makes your yes more meaningful and your no more respectful. Respect is becoming a two-way street in your life. You are less tolerant of subtle dismissals, especially the ones you once directed at yourself. Self-respect sets the tone for external respect. Not through force, but through consistency. Consistency is a form of kindness. You may look back at earlier versions of yourself and feel a mix of gratitude and sadness. Gratitude for how hard they tried. Sadness for how little support they had. Hold both. Complexity is not a problem to solve, it is a reality to honor. As the narrative stretches onward, it no longer seeks to hold your attention tightly. It trusts you to live without constant reinforcement. This is not withdrawal. It is confidence in your integration. What continues now does not need to be written line by line. It unfolds in the mundane choices that shape a life, when you rest, when you speak, when you wait, when you leave, when you stay. These choices are quieter than revelations, but more enduring. And so the voice that once spoke as guardian dissolves fully into your own inner steadiness. Not gone, absorbed. The protection you sought is now something you enact. The courage you admired is now something you practice. The conscience you listen to is now something you trust. There is no final sentence because life does not conclude in language. It continues in breath, in attention, in the way you meet yourself tomorrow morning and the morning after that. The river does not end. It widens. And you move with it, awake, grounded, and quietly, unmistakably alive.